By 1979, punk was dead. That was the headline. The Sex Pistols were a wreck. The Clash were signing to major labels. The rebellion? It's been televised. It was merchandised. And it was neutered. Gotta. New Wave was on the radio. Blondie was a pop act. Talking Heads were art school darlings. The danger was packaged and the package was selling. And on January 20th, 1981, Ronald Reagan was sworn into office.
To a few of us here today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion.
What happened next is not what the mainstream music press was paying attention to. In suburban basements, in VFW halls, in cities the arena circuit had no use for, something was being built. It was faster, it was harder, angrier, and completely indifferent to whether you approved of it. This is how Reagan's America killed punk, and what it created in the wreckage. To understand what hardcore was, you have to understand what punk had to become. The original movement was built on urban decay and artistic fury. New York dive bars, grimy London streets, the Ramones, the Pistols, the feeling of no future, and the gleeful desire to tear the system down.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this.
By the end of the decade, the shock had worn off. The industry punk wanted to destroy had co-opted with it. Labels signed the bands, sanded the edges, turned the movement into a marketable aesthetic. And the result? New Wave.
Alive and suddenly is dead.
Melodic where punk was raw, marketable where punk was confrontational. For the purists and the kids just discovering punk's primal energy, this felt like betrayal.
I don't mind you coming here, wasting all my time.
The rebellion had been packaged for mass consumption. The anger felt manufactured. The underground was desperate for a reset, for something that couldn't be bought and something that couldn't be sold. Reagan was about to give them a reason to scream. Reagan's presidency promised morning in America. Traditional values, economic optimism, a smiling father figure in the White House. But under that veneer, a different country was taking shape.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution.
Reaganomics cut taxes for corporations and the wealthy. Social programs are gutted. The moral majority gained political power. The Cold War was reignited. Nuclear annihilation was a daily anxiety, not an abstract one. For kids in the suburbs, this created a specific kind of alienation, not the visible urban decay that had produced punk in New York and London. Something quieter, and in some ways, something worse. The soul-crushing boredom of conformity, the sterile comfort of a world that claimed everything was fine, while nothing felt real. They felt invisible. Reagan wasn't just a politician to these kids. He was a symbol of phony culture, of manufactured optimism, of a system that ignored real problems in favor of feel-good patriotism. First wave punk had been anti-everything. This new anger was more focused, anti-Reagan, anti-consumerism, anti-complacency. The suburban powder keg had a fuse. In the explosion, it had a name. Hardcore wasn't an evolution of punk. It was a mutation, and it erupted simultaneously across the country in cities with no direct connection to each other, which tells you everything about the pressure that produced it. But here's the counter-argument first, because it comes up every single time we talk about this. Hardcore wasn't just kids who couldn't play. The speed wasn't a limitation, it was a position. Washington, D.C., Bad Brains, an all-black band whose sheer speed and musicianship set a standard nobody else could touch. Followed by Teen Idol's, then Minor Threat. Ian MacKaye, fronting Minor Threat, wasn't just playing fast, he was playing with furious precision, songs as declarations of ideology, not just noise. On the opposite coast, Black Flag. Punk speed fused with a grinding, sludgy heaviness that had no precedent. Relentless, punishing. Henry Rollins arriving as its vocalist in '81 and making the confrontation feel bodily. Damage that year was so raw that its distributor, a subsidiary of MCA, refused to release it, called it anti-parent. Black Flag took the albums, slapped a sticker on them quoting the rejection, and released it themselves on their own label, SST Records. That decision alone was as important as the music, because in Texas, DRI wrote a song called Reaganomics. Under a minute, pure thrash, everything the administration represented, compressed into 50 seconds and detonated. Hardcore built its own world because it had to. Mainstream clubs wouldn't book them. Radio wouldn't play them. So they just stopped asking. Greg Ginn founded SST Records to release Damaged. MacKaye and Jeff Nelson started Dischord Records just to release a record for their first band. These labels ran on collaboration and trust, not profit. Venues moved out of 21 and over city bars into VFW halls, community centers, the basements, all ages shows, a real community for kids who had been excluded from the existing infrastructure. Communication happened through fanzines. Photocopied sheets folded in somebody's bedroom, distributed through the same network the underground would be running on for the next decade. It wasn't a direct economic threat to the corporate industry. It was something more radical. Proof that a subculture could survive entirely on its own terms. And inside that ecosystem, something specific emerged. Straight edge. A 46-second Minor Threat song rejecting the rock and roll cliches of substance abuse in a punk scene that glorified self-destruction, Sobriety was a revolutionary act. The X marked on the hand, a bouncer's mark for underage kids, became a badge of honor. The system wanted you drunk and compliant. Clarity was resistance. So by the mid-'80s, hardcore was fracturing and innovating at a speed nobody could track. In New York, the scene developed its own identity. Agnostic front fusing hardcore speed with the grit of the city and the heaviness of thrash metal. The breakdown, a slower, brutally heavy instrumental section, getting perfected here, becoming a staple of heavy music for decades. DRI and SOD pioneering crossover thrash, which is punk speed and political fury with metal's technical riffs. The border between the two forms dissolving before anyone had the thought to name the dissolution. In DC, Rites of Spring and Embrace were planting seeds for what would eventually be called emo and post-hardcore. The Youth Crew movement bringing a more melodic sensibility that would eventually feed directly into pop punk and the skate scene of the 1990s. From 81 to 86, the genre was a pressure cooker. It didn't just save punk from commercial extinction, it mutated punk into dozens of new forms, and each carrying the original DNA. The speed, the anger, the refusal to ask permission. So did Reagan's American kill punk? In a way, yes. It killed the fashion-driven art school rebellion of the 70s. But in doing so, it created a vacuum. And the vacuum filled with something harder, something faster and more structurally resistant to commercial co-option than anything that original movement had produced. Hardcore was born from suburban emptiness and inner city grit simultaneously. It built its own labels, its own venues, its own communication networks, its own code of conduct. And it did all of it without asking the industry for any permission. The legacy runs through thrash metal, through metalcore, through emo, through every independent music scene that has decided the existing infrastructure is someone else's problem. Reagan wanted mourning in America. Instead, he got Minor Threat in a VFW hall in D.C., playing the kids who had nowhere else to be. So which bands from the early hardcore scene deserve more credit than it gets? Drop it below. I'm Fred Carroll. Every riff tells a story.
When a body started to bleed, one night evening.